Well, good morning. It is Tuesday, July 28th, 2026. I usually do these on the weekends, but I didn't get it done this weekend, and I didn't want to have another whole week go by before I came on and did a YouTube session of $5 in the world. And so I'm going to do that today, and I'll do it again this weekend. But this is called A Beautiful Partnership. This is the story of what was going on with my mom and dad before they were my mom and dad, how what their life was like in prior relationships, the ones just before they met each other, how they met. And I think it's a story of hope. It's a story that it's never too late for somebody. And if you're looking for opportunities, you might just find it. So, without any further ado, I'm going to read this revised chapter. I wrote a version of this story once. I read it earlier on YouTube and rewrote it a bit, and this is it. And of course, always you can put your comments in the chat. Burdett Lee Gray and Andrea Meredith Quayle enjoyed 36 years of marriage before Mom passed away due to cancer in 1998. She died at home with all of us around her. She took the opportunity to tell each one of us that she harbored no regrets and that she loved us. Her sentiments remain a gift to us that keeps giving. It is one of those life-sustaining memories. She possessed a generous spirit that allowed her to put others first without diminishing herself. In the midst of her pain at the end of her life, she still ministered to ours. Andrea Quayle came into the world on October 2nd, 1924. She was one of four girls raised by Frank and Lucille Quayle. They lived in Bloomfield Hills, Michigan. Her dad was living as a commercial artist. He was often commissioned by the auto companies to paint portraits of their cars for print ads. Lucille focused on taking care of the family, teaching the girls manners, and entertaining guests. She played the piano beautifully. She was self-taught and could play by ear. As a young girl, she had helped her parents budget by playing music at local movie theaters during the silent movie era. Our mom was not the natural storyteller that Dad was, and so we lacked the depth of knowledge of her childhood. We know that she loved her parents and her sisters. They stayed involved in our lives as long as they lived. They enjoyed a genteel lifestyle. They enjoyed cocktail hour in the den before dinner, a summer cottage, and a winter place in Florida. They entertained friends at their home regularly. When the Great Depression hit, they had to scale back quite a bit. To their credit, they weathered the changes together. The United States entered World War II just about the time Mom was graduating from high school. The love of her life joined the service and died in action fairly early. This event was a devastating blow for Mom. She did meet another man, and they fell in love and got married. His name was Richard Barker. He struggled with the gap between his budget and his tastes. They did have two children, Rick and Leslie. Two other children did not live very long. While they were married for about 15 years, they were not always happy years, and for a number of reasons, they divorced. Leslie ended up with Mom, and Mom moved back home with her parents to regroup. Rick was raised by Richard and their stepmother. Meanwhile, Dad had married a woman named Bonnie. This was before the war had started. Life was very tough at times. Dad worked a number of jobs. He told us about sawing hogs in a meat packing plant. He drove a delivery truck and sold meat to butchers. He drove a dump truck for a construction company for a while. He learned a lot along the way, especially about hard work and the art of selling. For some reason, they were not able to have children of their own, but they did adopt a boy, Ron. During the war, they lived in Lansing, Michigan. Dad was a little too old to be drafted, and he was married with a family. He drove a taxi then. He told us that it might have been his favorite job. He loved the variety of encounters, the freedom of movement, and the cash in hand at the end of each day. His family did not share his love for this job. When they would be out and about socially and somebody asked Dad what he did for a living, Bonnie would oftentimes leave the room in embarrassment. Fortunately for all involved, Dad was introduced to a successful businessman named Norm Bagger. Norm liked Dad and decided to hire him for a sales position. Bagger had opened a mobile home dealership. This would be around 1946, 1947. The war was over, and returning GIs needed places to live and a way to see the country. These towable trailers made both possible. Dad accepted the opportunity and proved to be very talented in sales and marketing. He made so much money from commissions that he alienated Norm's business partner, Mrs. Bagger. In a sales career, it's not uncommon to encounter some people in management who resent the income salespeople can generate. Mrs. Bagger was one of them. Dad did his best to tune her out and focus on his production. Norm did his best to protect his best producer from the worst of the complaining. One day, Dad overheard the Baggers arguing about the business. Dad's earning power was one of the issues. Mrs. Bagger warned Norm that if he wasn't careful, Dad would earn enough to go into business for himself. Dad told us that this idea had never crossed his mind before, and after he heard it, the idea was practically all he ever thought about. So he started Gray Trailer Sales in 1950. He became very successful and began to have an impact on the industry at large. He chaired associations, he began to expand his operation. Life was going well in this area, but the money and success also fueled the party lifestyle that he and Bonnie enjoyed. His drinking increased to probably a fifth of booze a day. He smoked 3 packs of cigarettes a day as well. He was a bundle of energy, ideas, and stress. An automobile accident in 1953 almost ended all of it. During the surgery to repair a broken femur, his heart stopped. Obviously, the doctors were able to revive him. He told us that when he came to in the post-op, he heard Bonnie and his sister Maxine discussing how he had almost died. This proved a pivotal moment. The extended stay in the hospital and the time to really think clearly led him to decide to quit the boozing and the smoking. The resolve held, and he never smoked or drank again over the next 64 years of his life. His dad joked years later that had he known that a broken leg would make such a dramatic impact on Dad, he would have broken the damn thing years earlier. Kidding aside, everybody could see and enjoy the dramatic change in his character and outlook. Bonnie and Dad had another 8 years together in this lifestyle, during which Dad was able to make amends for so much of what had happened over the years of heavy drinking. The future looked bright for the Grays, especially after Bonnie received a clean bill of health after a serious bout with cancer. Then, in 1961, Bonnie suffered a fatal heart attack. Dad was devastated. Fortunately for Dad, he had a strong network of friends and family that rallied around him. He and Bonnie had started going to church, and an amazing pastor named Ed Lewis played a major role in helping Dad process his grief. My middle name is Edward, in honor of this great man. Dad got back to work and started thinking about his next steps in life. Books like Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill and The Prophet by Khalil Gibran became lifelong resources for him. He appreciated his friends and family, but he was still lonely without a wife. So in the early 60s, Mom was living at her parents' place in Holly, Michigan with Leslie. Dad was living in one of his trailers in Benton Harbor, Michigan, and running his company. A mutual acquaintance set them up on a blind date. Dad went to pick up Mom at her place in Holly. Mom said the first thing that struck her about Dad was that he could make her dad laugh. Frank had a good sense of humor, but he did not. Frank had a good sense of humor, but he did like to put up a bit of a stoic front, especially toward men calling on one of his girls. His unguarded laughter with Burr was a good sign as far as Mom was concerned. They hit it off immediately, and after a quick courtship, Mom and Dad got married in 1962 at a courthouse with Ed Lewis presiding. Mom inherited a large social network when she married Dad, and she loved the socializing. She won over even the most protective people in Dad's orbit. Mom's confidence and self-esteem needed rebuilding after the divorce and all that went with that, and Dad was just the man for the job. He adored Andrea and made it his life's work to make sure that she knew how much he cherished her, and she found herself again. She was able to make sure that Dad knew how much she valued him. Their relationship never stopped growing in intimacy and connection. They met one another when neither one of them thought they would find happiness in marriage again. They made the most of their second chances. They faced the idea that companionship might not happen for them again, but they did not close off their hearts from hoping for another shot at love. They did their best each day and wondered. A long shot blind date turned into the finest marriage I've ever seen. Some of the most amazing things in our lives start when we least expect them to, as long as we keep our hearts open to the possibilities. So that's how they met. Heard that story many, many times. And I'm so glad it happened because it happened, I happened, and I'm glad to be here. So that is it for that chapter. I'd love to get your thoughts on it. Is there enough detail, enough depth? Would you like more? Is there any changes that you could think of that might make this stronger? Or is it, or do you like it just the way it is? Anything is fine. Love to hear your thoughts. How did you meet your love of your life? You can put that in the comment too if you feel bold enough. All right, that's it for today. I'll see you again this weekend.